There are 10 signs that your brain works differently from everyone else's. And 95% of the people who have them don't even know they have an exceptional IQ. In the next few minutes, you're going to find out exactly how many you have. Before we start, I need to tell you something that most videos on this topic don't. Real intelligence doesn't look like what you were taught. It's not the person who talks fastest, not the one who raises their hand first, not the one who has an answer for everything. Cognitive psychologists have spent decades studying this, and what they found goes completely against what we assume. Intelligence has nothing to do with what you know. It has to do with how your brain processes the world. And that processing leaves marks, specific habits, concrete behavioral patterns that show up again and again in people with unusually high cognitive abilities. Some of those patterns are going to seem strange to you. Others you're going to recognize in yourself and not be sure whether that's good or bad news. Keep count of how many you recognize. At the end of the video, we'll see what your score means. Sign 1. You prefer to be alone. And people always misread that. It's not that you're antisocial. It's not that something is wrong with you. It's that your brain needs silence to work. And silence is where it produces the most. The London School of Economics published research that found something counterintuitive. People with higher intelligence tend to feel less satisfied with frequent social interaction. Not more satisfied. Less. The reason lies in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thinking, planning, and deep analysis. That area needs quiet to operate at its highest level. Social noise interrupts it. It's like trying to solve a complicated math problem while someone talks in your ear. You can do it, but not as well. If you seek solitude not to escape the world but to think better inside it, give yourself a point. Sign 2. You ask questions nobody else thinks to ask. They're not grand philosophical questions. That would be too obvious. It's the small ones that reveal something. Why does this process work this way and not another? Who decided this was normal, and when did we all accept it without question? What if something everyone takes for granted is actually wrong? Your brain searches for patterns compulsively. It can't help it. It's like having an internal engine with no off switch. From the outside, that can look like you complicate everything, like you're never satisfied, like you always have a but. It's not a but. It's a brain that processes at a deeper level than average. If the people around you often tell you that you overthink things, that's not a flaw. It might be exactly the opposite. Sign 3. You talk to yourself. Out loud. And you're right to do it. This is the one that confuses people on the outside the most, and the one most people do in private without admitting it. Psychologists call it self-directed speech, and the studies are clear. Verbalizing thoughts out loud improves concentration, organizes information, and strengthens working memory. It's not a sign of madness. It's an active cognitive system processing information in real time. When someone narrates what they're doing while they do it, what you're seeing is a brain that found a tool to think more clearly. The problem is that socially it sounds strange. So most people do it in the shower, in the car, or behind closed doors. Fun fact, you probably do it too. And you probably don't admit it in public either. Sign 4. You say, I don't know, with a comfort that unsettles people. This is the one fewest people expect, and the one that says the most about how your brain works. We live in a culture that rewards having the answer, where admitting you don't know something is read as ignorance or weakness. But people with higher cognitive ability are, paradoxically, the first to admit what they don't know. This has a name in psychology. The Dunning-Kruger effect describes something very specific. People with less knowledge about a topic tend to overestimate what they understand. People with more knowledge tend to underestimate it. Why? Because the more you know about something, the more clearly you see the vastness of what you still don't understand. A true expert sees the edges of their own knowledge. Someone who watched 3 videos on the topic thinks they already have it mastered. Saying, I don't know, comfortably isn't a sign of ignorance. It's a sign that your map of the world is precise enough to recognize where it ends. If this describes you, give yourself another point. Sign 5. You overanalyze things others would resolve in seconds. Sometimes this looks like indecision. Sometimes the people around you lose patience with you. But what's happening on the inside is very different from what it looks like from the outside. An analytical brain doesn't process one decision. It simultaneously processes several possible scenarios. It considers variables others never even contemplated. It explores second and third order consequences. That process is invisible. From the outside, they just see someone who takes too long to decide. What they don't see is that same brain, when it faces a real and complex problem, arrives at solutions others wouldn't find because they never took the time to think with that depth. The same switch that seems like a flaw in everyday situations is an enormous advantage when the situation demands it. The problem isn't the brain. It's that most everyday situations don't require that level of processing, and the brain applies it anyway. Sign 6. You have a sense of humor not everyone gets on the first try. Humor isn't just entertainment. Cognitively, it's one of the most complex processes the brain performs. For something to be funny, your brain has to recognize a pattern, anticipate a logical conclusion, and in the last second, process an unexpected break from that expectation, all in fractions of a second. Research in the psychology of intelligence found a measurable correlation between cognitive ability and advanced humor processing. That's why highly intelligent people often have a humor that connects ideas that shouldn't connect, references that require context, irony on multiple levels. It's not that they want to exclude anyone, it's that their brain operates on that frequency naturally, and the humor comes from there. If you've ever laughed at something nobody else in the room understood, now you know what that might mean. Sign 7. You change your mind when new evidence appears, and you're not ashamed of it. On social media, this destroys you. Because we live in an era where changing your mind is read as inconsistency or as admitting the other person was right. But people with high cognitive ability don't treat their beliefs as identity. They treat them as working models. A working model is a tool. When new information appears that improves it, the model gets updated. No drama, no ego involved. That's called cognitive flexibility, and it's one of the abilities most correlated with general intelligence according to psychological research. People who never change their minds aren't firmer in their convictions. Their brain just prioritizes consistency over accuracy. A brain that prefers to be right over being correct is a brain with a configuration problem. If you can change your mind in the face of solid evidence without it costing you your ego, give yourself an important point. Sign 8. Your brain turns on at night when the rest of the world has already shut down. It's not a whim, it's not a lack of discipline, and it's not that you're a disaster with schedules. There's research behind this. Studies on cognitive flexibility suggest that individuals with greater mental adaptability tend to function better outside of conventional patterns, including conventional schedules. At night, there are fewer interruptions, fewer external demands, less social noise, and the prefrontal cortex, which needs a quiet environment to operate at its highest level, finally has the space it needs. The world is designed for early risers. That misalignment may have seemed like a discipline problem your entire life. Maybe it wasn't. Sign 9. You observe more than you speak, and that constantly gets you misread. In any new group, in a meeting, at a party, you're one of the people who spends the most time listening before participating. It's not shyness, it's processing. While others talk to fill the space, you're reading the group dynamic, processing who is saying what with their words and who is saying something else with their body language, analyzing what isn't being said. When you finally do speak, you do it with far more information than anyone else in the room. That's why your comments tend to land differently. The problem is that from the outside that reads as distance, coldness, or lack of interest, when in reality it's exactly the opposite, maximum attention. There's a difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. Most people do the first without realizing it. Sign 10. You search for meaning behind everything. And sometimes that weighs on you. This is the last one, and maybe the most important. People with high intelligence don't just process what happens, they process why it happens, and the why behind the why. They have a very sharp awareness of the complexity of human behavior, of how contradictory the world can be, of the distance between how things are and how they could be. That generates deep and constant reflection about purpose, about identity, about whether what they're doing with their life has real meaning. It sounds good in theory. In practice, it can become exhausting because there's no off switch. The brain keeps processing when it should be resting, keeps searching for meaning where others simply accept. That's why many of these people carry a particular sense of loneliness, not because there's no one nearby, but because few people process the world on that same frequency. If this describes you, you have the 10th sign. Now you have your score. If you recognize between 1 and 3, Your brain has flashes of this type of processing in specific areas. We all do to some degree. If you recognize between 4 and 6, you're above average in cognitive flexibility. The people around you probably don't always understand you, and that's not your problem. If you recognize 7 or more, there's a real probability that your brain operates at a level that the educational system and social environment never taught you to recognize or make use of. And this is what I want you to take from this video. Many of the behaviors you interpreted as flaws your whole life, the solitude, the doubt, the overanalysis, the changing your mind, maybe they were never flaws at all. Maybe they were exactly what they are, the marks of a brain that processes the world with a depth that doesn't always have a place to show itself. The question worth asking isn't whether you're intelligent. The question is, what are you doing with that ability? That's it. If this video made you think, it already did its job. Share it with someone who needs to hear it.